Hello, Steve Arts 89. Well, I have been going through my horror movie franchises. There's a lot that I've maybe seen the first film and not seen the rest. But now I'm up to Scream. Now, I am embarrassed to say I haven't seen Scream 5 and 6. I saw the first four in the cinema. Um, and I don't know, I didn't see 5 and I didn't see 6. So I remember the first film, of course. I watched that. It was epic. It was iconic. Everybody watched it. It was huge. Then I saw the other films each time. And I think maybe I watched the first film and maybe the second film before I watched the third film because it was a trilogy. And it's probably the last time I watched it. But it's one of those films where, everybody saw it and I just have a really clear memory of it. And the funny thing was, going back and watching it now, I really remembered so much of it. Whereas other films, I don't remember. Like, I couldn't remember the fourth film. I know I'd seen it. I knew Adam Brody was in it, and he played a cop, and that's all I remember about the whole film. Now, the first film was released in, I think, 1995. No, 1996. December 1996. Yeah, I thought so. I don't know where I got 1995. It was huge. It cost 14 to 15 million, so it wasn't a big budget, but for the 90s, that was, decent. It made 173 million. I thought it only made just over 100 million, but that's probably the international box office. So, it changed. It changed the horror genre basically. Now it didn't start this trend. This started with Wes Craven's New Nightmare, where it was a self-referential, conscious film where it was basically it was aware of not just breaking the fourth wall, but aware of the franchise and its rules and so forth. And this film, did that with horror in general. Now the film starts off with, of course, Drew Barrymore getting a call, someone, creepy person calling her back and asking, what's her favourite scary movie. And then it becomes very clear that this person is watching her in the house and that he is, stalking her. And eventually we find out that her boyfriend, who she thinks is going to save her, has already been basically encountered, and he's been captured, and he's basically tied to a chair on the back patio, and she's forced to answer horror questions to save his life. Now, I don't know when I first saw this if I knew, because we all know Drew Barrymore was in like this, really good, horror movie, and I don't know if we knew that she died in the first scene. I'd like to think I knew that going in, and I wasn't disappointed, but I understood, like the reference with Psycho, how, Janet Leigh was sort of like the big star, and then she was killed, early in the film. And it was supposed to sort of, make people unsure of what was going to happen and put them on the edge of their seats because, they just killed the star. And they kind of did this as well, but she died in the first 13 minutes. And it is a great sequence. It's well shot, it's well staged, it's well acted, it's iconic. It was amazing to watch on the big screen back in the day. Now then, the rest of the film, it's Neve Campbell, and she already has a stigma about her because her mother was killed the year before, and there are a lot of rumors about her mother, and she put away this guy Cotton. I think his name was Cotton Weary. And there was a push to get him out because basically they considered he actually was innocent. So there's this push and pull throughout the film where we have Courtney Cox as Gail Weathers, who was a reporter who was trying to get him out and had basically written a book saying that her mother, that she was a liar, and there's this conflict. And there is a great conflict where she does punch her in the face after she says something about her mother, and Rose McGowan's line, bam, bitch went down. Like, so many things and moments in this film I really remembered and was able to just sort of quote the dialogue. And it's like, I've only seen this film about 3 times, but I know it really well. I'm not going to go through all the plot points and everything, but basically she's hunted. There's some question as to whether, she might be staging it for attention, and people blame her, and there's still questions about her mother, but obviously someone is killing people, and they shut down the school. The town's sort of starts to react, but then, of course, the kids have the obligatory party, which puts everyone at jeopardy, in jeopardy at the same place. And eventually we end up with the fairly iconic double, the two killers, and them being foiled essentially at the end, and, it set up this sort of new idea that, the victims survive, and each new film has a different killer, and it's up for the same, victims who survived the first time to survive the second film and work out, who the killer is this time. And that sort of set the sort of Scream dynamic. And I think I'm going to do a review for each film. I was going to do a review for the whole franchise, but or do I just do 10 minutes for the whole thing? I think, actually, no, I'm just going to stick with it. Okay, so it ends really well. It really has, I don't want to ruin it in case someone watches this and hasn't seen it, though I can't imagine that's possible, but it delivered. It gave fans what they wanted. It was self-conscious. We went in knowing what it was, what we expected, and, it delivered, and it was huge, and it changed everything. And then every film after Scream wanted to be Scream. And we had some of the big horror, studio releases, like I know you did last summer, and Urban Legend, and it started the sort of trend of big budget, mainstream horror films, which weren't really big budget comparatively, but, were well made, that made a lot of money. And there was a string of them in the late 90s. Now, Scream 2, it came out, I think, 2 years later in 98, if I remember correctly. No, December 1997. So December 1997. Wow, it was only a year between. I thought it was 2 years. Okay, maybe it was released in Australia a few months later. I remember it being 98, but whatever. Cost 24 million, but it made 172. So it made 1 million less and cost 10 million more. But still, that's a pretty good profit. So this film, we find Sydney now at college, and, we had a lot of little cameos like Joshua Jackson and Sarah Michelle Gellar. We had, of course, how can I forget, the start of this film, of course, is the premiere of Stab, and we actually see Jada Pinkett Smith attending, spouting off about how black people don't survive, horror movies and that, with her black boyfriend, and they both get killed. And she gets killed in a great scene where she gets stabbed in the theatre, in like the second row, and she gets up and the killer continues to stab her, and people don't notice at first because everyone's in Scream costumes, and they do start to notice, but they think it's part of promotion. And she goes up to the front, and she's literally on the stage in front of the screen, holding her stomach, blood coming out of her mouth, and she screams and falls and dies on the floor of the cinema in front of the screen. And then people start to realise maybe this is not PR. It's a great scene, and I think even then no one liked Jada Pinkett Smith, and we're all like happy to see her killed, and even more so now because no one likes her. So it's got a weird. We shouldn't enjoy seeing her killed as much as I think the audience does. And I think it's in part because they just want to get into the next film. But now I think people will view it a bit differently now that she's got this really horrible reputation after what happened with Will Smith and everything. So now we go to Cena's college. God, what's her name? Sydney. She is now doing theatre, and she's got a boyfriend, and she's got friends, and she's trying to have a normal life, and then the killings start happening again. She starts to distance herself from the boyfriend, and she eventually... Gail comes back, and we have Laurie Metcalf playing another reporter who's bothering her because she wants to be like her because she's local. And we have this situation where... do I give away the killer in each film? Just in case you haven't seen this, I better not. Damn, okay. Well, we have a surprise, of course, because each time, it's a whodunit, so we have this big reveal of who the killer is. And this one, it's a relative of one of the people from the first film that died, so they want revenge. I'm not going to give it away, but it's pretty great, and I feel guilty because the actor was probably typecast in the role they had, and when that actor revealed himself as the murderer, I said, go, character name of the person from the series, and the whole audience laughed. And that really undermined the actor's performance, and I always feel guilty about that, and I owe them an apology. But at least for that screening. But yeah, so eventually, of course, there's a big struggle. You know, the killers, there's two of them again, are killed, and the Sydney and Courtney and all that survive. Now the third film did pretty much the same box office, if I remember correctly, and of course my phone's not cooperating with me and showing me the 40 million. So the budget went up, but it did go down 10 million, so it was 161.8 million. So a little less profitable, but still in the same ballpark, literally within the same, between 60 and 70 million for the box office. Now this film, they set it up as a trilogy, and it was supposed to be a trilogy. It was supposed to stop here. Now this film was done in 2000, so February of 2000, so basically a year and a bit. So they almost got the film out in another year. It was only off by like 2 months. So we've had a Scream film each year for 3 years pretty much. So yeah, I had to take a moment because I just had a total blank on the third film. But once I remembered the setting, I remembered the film. Okay, so this film is set in Hollywood. It's set around the making of Stab 3, because all the way through the films they've been doing a parody of the film within a film, where they've got the Stab series of films that have come from the book that Gail Weathers wrote about, the first killings. And we find, another killer has come and they are killing people. And they're leaving a photo of Sydney's mother with each body. And the question is, what does it have to do with her? And we find out that she disappeared for a couple of years when she was young, and apparently she came to Hollywood and she was a starlet, and she appeared in several low-budget horror movies who were produced by the man who is producing the latest Stab film. I'm not sure if he produced all three, but he's producing the latest one, played by Lance Henriksen. So there's another great, guest. There's great guests all over the place in these films. Everyone wanted to be in these films. And so we have the actors who play the characters and the real characters interacting, which is kind of funny, but then we actually have them actually working together, particularly the two Gales, because Gail, who's played by Parker Posey, she basically at first just wants to do a better job and know her better, but then it's like, this person wants to kill you. If I'm with you, they're going to kill you, not me. I've got more of a chance to survive if I'm with you. So they stick together, and sadly she doesn't survive. But the main characters do, of course, the main leads. And I don't know if it's in their contracts that they can't die, or if it's just how the rules are for the Scream series, where the victims survive and we come back to see them again and again and again, because we love Dewey, we love, Gail, we love Sydney, and we want them to survive. And we care about them more so than other horror movies, where it ends up, most of the films, they end up being about the killer, and the killer returns with each film, and people seem to root for them, or at least want to see them again, whereas this, it's around the other way. But so I'm not going to give it all away, but basically there were some issues when Maureen was in Hollywood, and one of these producers, I think you can imagine how this went, and she left, and someone is coming back for revenge again on her behalf, but also because of her, because they rejected them, without going into too much detail. And this is the first one out of the 3 films where I actually didn't remember who the killer was. And I was like, oh, okay. And I actually didn't even recognize the actor, because he was a little younger and a bit, fresher of face than when I saw him later in a TV show, like a few years later. But it worked. You can believe it. If you go back and watch the first 2 films, knowing who the killers are, you can sort of see it being laid down. It kind of makes sense to a degree. There's a little bit of Mrs. Voorhees there, where you would have been a struggle to work out who the second killer was. Now the third killer, I think you could have worked out who it was if you really tried, but it wasn't obvious. There could have been many people, that's, all the red herrings and all that. But this film was good. It was a bit convoluted. They end up, the last section is set in a Hollywood mansion with hidden doors and hidden rooms, and it's a bit much on some level, but it still works. It still has this epic feel. Each of the three films had their own setting, kind of like the Star Wars films. It does feel like a trilogy. It does end well. At the end of the film, you have Sydney basically at peace, and it does feel like a trilogy. It does feel like an ending, and they could have left it at this. They didn't need to do a fourth film, but they did come back and do a fourth film 10 years after the originals, and it's all about, legacies, and because that's something that happens in horror movies where, like, 10 years ago this crime happened, and then, it starts up again. So it works, but these films really stand out on their own as a trilogy, and I really love them. And I'm glad I saw them in the cinema. I'm glad I got to live through this sort of era. And I just wanted to do a little review of these three as a trilogy together, despite my brain hiccup earlier. But I'm going to go. Feel free to share, like, comment, subscribe. Let me know what you think of the Scream films. The first Scream films, the Scream trilogy. Should it have just been a trilogy? Should they have done a fourth film? Should they have done a fifth and sixth films? I still haven't seen 5 and 6. I don't know if they're any good. They did make good money, because this film made only 97 million. So it made less than... Oh, no, sorry, no, this film... I'm thinking of the fourth film. The fourth film dropped in budget, but some time had passed. The momentum was gone. This film made 161.8 million, so basically the same amount of money within 10 million of the first two films. They're all in the same ballpark, but it did cost 15 million more, so it's $40 million. So a little bit more expensive, a little bit less profitable, but still in the same ballpark. But I'm going to go. Feel free to share, like, comment, subscribe. Let me know what you think of the original Scream trilogy.